Hi, welcome to my Parsha shiur. In today's shiur, we're going to talk about Parshat Vayeishev. This Parsha shiur is sponsored by Dr. Susan Grayson in memory of her grandmother, Miriel Kanowitz, Miriel Bas Yodeleib, Aleha Sholem, whose yahrzeit is on the 23rd day of Kislev. May her neshama have an aliyah, may we all be zeicha to see Tchias HaMesim. Okay. Let's talk about the main character in Parshat Vayeishev, Joseph, Yosef HaTzadik. He is the 11th son of Yaakov, one of 12 brothers. All of the brothers are equal in status, or at least one would assume that all of the brothers are equal in status. But is that really true? Is Yosef equal to his brothers? Because Yosef's story doesn't feel like just one of the brothers' material. Think about it. Not only is there a whole dramatic saga revolving around him in Sefer Bereshis, but his children, Ephraim and Manasseh, get bumped up to tribe status, which means that they are equal to Yosef's 11 brothers. That's right. Yosef's kids become equals with their uncles. When Yaakov is blessing Yosef in Parshat Vayechi, he says, "Va'ato shnei vanecha noilodim lecha be'eretz Mitzrayim, Ad boye elecha Mitzrayma, li heim, Ephraim and Manasseh, ki Reuven v'Shimon, yihiyu li." Your two sons who were born to you in Egypt before I arrived, they are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh shall be like Reuven and Shimon to me. Basically, Ephraim and Manasseh are getting upgraded from grandchildren to being full-blown sons of Yaakov. Now, that's wild. No other son of Yaakov gets this treatment. It's like Yosef isn't just one of the tribes, he's something more. He's straddling this weird line between patriarch and sibling. But the strange thing is that the Gemara in Brochus Daf Tezayin Amud Beis seems to push back on this idea. Tana Rabbanon, Ein Kohen Avos Ela Lishloisha. The title of Avos, Av, patriarch, is exclusive to 3 people, Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov. That's it. No one else makes the cut. So where does that leave Yosef? Is he one of the Avos? Or isn't he? What's going on here? Let's dive into it all and find out. Think about it. If you read the Torah, it's almost as if Yosef has his own spin-off series from Parshat Vayeishev onwards, with just one brief intermission for the Yehuda and Tamar story. It's all Yosef, Yosef, Yosef. And his brothers, well, they're just supporting actors. In Hollywood, we would call them an ensemble cast. Walk-on roles only. Because we all know who the lead actor is. Yosef dominates the narrative. Before Yosef, the Torah is all about Abraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, the patriarchs. After Yosef, when we move into Sefer Shmos, the Torah's story moves into a narrative about the Jewish nation as a whole. Yosef is a bridge, the bridge, between these two worlds. The last act of Bereshis is essentially the Yosef show, with everyone else playing secondary roles. But why? Why does Yosef get this kind of focus? Why does the Torah spend so much time on him? If he's not one of the Avos, why does he get treated like one of the Avos? So here's where it gets really interesting. It would appear that Yosef is a transitional figure. The Avos, Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, set up the foundation of the Jewish people. They defined what it means to be connected to God, to live a life of faith and to pass on a spiritual legacy. But then comes Yosef, and the whole narrative shifts. Yosef represents a new reality. He's not just dealing with a small family or local issues. He's thrust onto the world stage. He's navigating Egyptian politics, managing a global famine, and grappling with his brother's betrayal. Yosef is the first of Yaakov's children to step outside the family bubble and engage with the larger world. And this is what makes him different. He's not just a tribe guy, he's bigger than that. Yosef paves the way for how the Jewish people survive and thrive in exile. He's the blueprint for living as a Jew in the diaspora, keeping one's identity intact in a foreign world while thriving in that world. So, why should we care whether Yosef is a patriarch or a tribe? What difference does it make? It makes a huge difference. Yosef's story is about more than family drama or dreams coming true. It's about leadership. It's about the broad picture. It's about being who you are as a person of faith in the big wide world where your faith and identity are threatened. Yosef teaches us that it means what it means to live and to lead in uncharted territory. The Avos had their challenges, but they were mostly struggles within the land of Israel. And in Yaakov's case, in his struggles with Lavan, they were about personal challenges. But Yosef is different. He's figuring out how to be Jewish in Egypt, and how to be Jewish and a leader for non-Jews. Second, Yosef represents the bridge between the family stage and the national stage. He shows us how to move from being a tight-knit group of believers to becoming a people with a mission to change the world. In other words, how do we succeed beyond the startup stage so that we can be ready for an IPO? And finally, Yosef is the blueprint for resilience. His life wasn't easy. He was rejected by his brothers. He was sold into slavery. He was wrongfully imprisoned. And remarkably, Yosef's strength wasn't just surviving. That was hard enough. Yosef's strength is that he didn't just survive, he thrived. Yosef rose to power, saved the world, forgave his brothers, and ultimately saved his family, which meant that they became a nation, which meant they got the Torah, which meant he saved the world again. And this time, it was for all time. Yosef isn't just a supporting character in the story of the Jewish people. He's the linchpin, the connector, the one who sets the stage for everything that comes next. That's why we need to think of him as more than just a tribe. He's not exactly an Av, a patriarch, but he's definitely in a league of his own. Okay, now that we've established Yosef's unique role, let's zoom in on one of the major themes of his story, brotherhood. And let's be real, when it comes to Yosef and his brothers, it's complicated. The Torah makes it crystal clear from the start that there's tension in this family. Vayiru Echav ki oisei ahav avihem mikol Echav, vayisnu oisei v'lo yachlu dabrei l'sholem. And his brothers saw that their father loved Yosef more than all his brothers, and they hated him, and they could not speak to him nicely. Talk about drama. Not only do the brothers hate Yosef, they won't even fake politeness. This is not your typical sibling rivalry over who gets the bigger chocolate chip cookie. This is full-on animosity. But here's the fascinating part. Even though it all sounds like a total disaster, Chazal point out something positive here. The brothers are being honest. They're not putting on a smile and pretending everything's fine. Their refusal to speak to him, to Yosef, reflects their unwillingness to live with hypocrisy. And as uncomfortable as that is, it's actually the first step toward resolving the conflict. And let's remember, you've got to remember this, Yosef and his brothers aren't the first siblings to struggle. The entire Sefer Vayeishev is basically a running commentary on sibling tension. First, we have Cain and Abel, Cain and Hevel, the original sibling rivalry which ends in murder. Then we have Yitzchak and Yishmael, two brothers divided by their different mothers, and they go their separate ways. And after them, you have Yaakov and Esau, a story of deception, stolen blessings, and decades of estrangement. It's almost as if the whole narrative of the Torah is setting us up for this grand finale of sibling conflict between Yosef and his brothers, except that this time, things are different. Instead of the sibling rivalry ending in a permanent separation, or worse, Yosef and his brothers find a way to resolve their differences. How did this happen? And why is it important? It is clear from the very beginning of the story that Yosef is uniquely positioned to fix the toxic sibling rivalry dynamic. Why? Because he was born into the role. Think about the name Yosef. When Rachel names him, she says, Asaf Elokim Escher Posi, Yosef Hashem Li Ben Acher. God has taken away my disgrace. May God add for me another son. The word for add in Hebrew is Yosef. On the surface, this is just a mother celebrating the birth of her first child. But dig a little deeper and you'll see that Yosef is already different. He's not just Rachel's son. He's her hope for more children. His name, Yosef, literally means add. He's born with the expectation of creating more for the family. In contrast to the other brothers, Yosef doesn't come into the world competing for his place. He's all about adding to the family, not taking away from it. Yosef's role as the solver of sibling tension in the Torah mirrors his broader role in Jewish history. Just as he's the transitional figure between the Avos, the patriarchs, and the tribes, he's also the one who transitions the family from conflict to unity. You might ask, why does any of this matter? The answer is, it matters very much. The Torah spends so much time on Yosef's story because it's not just about him and his brothers, it's about us. The issue of sibling rivalry isn't just a historical problem, it's a timeless problem. Whether it's personal relationships, communal dynamics, or national conflicts, the lessons of Yosef's story are still relevant, and they are always relevant. The first step to solving a problem is admitting it exists. The brothers couldn't speak to Yosef because they hated him, but at least they didn't pretend to love him. And Yosef, his ability to rise above the pettiness of sibling rivalry and focus on the bigger picture sets the tone for how we, as Jews, approach conflict. Don't get bogged down in the small petty details. Keep dreaming and make sure to dream big. The future is bright, so long as you don't let the baggage of today's nonsense hold you back. And Yosef also teaches us that unity doesn't mean everyone has to be the same. It means recognizing our differences, confronting our challenges, and working together toward a common goal. That's the essence of brotherhood, and it's the legacy of Yosef HaTzadik. Now let's move on and look at Yosef's broader vision. Yosef isn't just a family guy, he's got a global mission. That's what sets him apart from his brothers, and even from his father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. From his earliest dreams to his rise to power in Egypt, Yosef's story is filled with moments that suggest he sees the world differently. He's not content with the small scale. Yosef is thinking big, aiming for universal impact. Let's start with Yosef's dreams, because, frankly, they tell us everything we need to know about his mindset. In Yosef's first dream, he and his brothers are in a field, binding sheaves. Suddenly, his sheaf stands tall, and his brothers' sheaves gather around and bow down to it. On the surface, it looks like a power move. Hey brothers, one day you'll all bow down to me. And yes, it's not hard to see why they didn't love hearing that. But look a little closer. What are they all doing in the dream? They're gathering wheat. Yosef isn't just dreaming about dominance. He is dreaming about agriculture, which means he's dreaming about sustenance, about feeding people. This is Yosef's vision for the future, a world where resources are managed wisely, where hunger is eliminated, and where he is at the center of it all, making it happen. Wow! And the second dream is even more ambitious. Yosef dreams of the sun, the moon, the stars bowing down to him. This time, the symbolism goes beyond his brothers. He's thinking cosmically, positioning himself as a central figure in the grand scheme. Doing good is not just for the world, it's for the whole universe. He's a Yosef, an adder for the whole world. If the first dream was about feeding people, the second dream is about leadership on a universal scale. Why does Yosef think this way? Yosef was born into the world as a crown prince. He was the eldest child of Rachel, Yaakov's favourite wife, and it seemed he was destined for greatness from the very start. But then reality hit. Yosef discovered that the family wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for him. Instead, there was competition, serious competition for the top spot. Now, most people in Yosef's position would respond in one of two ways. They'd either give up entirely, fading into the background, or they'd get low down and dirty, fighting tooth and nail to secure their place. But Yosef, he chose a different path. Yosef retained his irrepressible optimism. He didn't stop dreaming. If anything, he dreamed even bigger. He imagined a future where he wasn't just part of the family, but leading it. His brothers wanted to fight with him, but Yosef never fought back. He was bigger than that, and that just made them even angrier. Yosef's greatness wasn't just in his ability to dream, it was in his refusal to be dragged into the muck. He didn't let the jealousy and resentment of his brothers define him. Instead, he stayed focused on his vision, on his potential, and on the role that he believed he was destined to play. This irrepressible optimism is what makes Yosef so unique. He doesn't let hardship or opposition crush him. Instead, he rises above it. His dreams may have irritated his brothers, but the dreams also defined him. Yosef wasn't just dreaming about himself, he was dreaming about what the family, and by extension, the Jewish people, could become. And when Yosef finally gets his chance to lead, he puts his vision into action. And what an amazing vision it is. As second in command to Pharaoh, Yosef implements a bold economic strategy during the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine. He recognizes the need for resource management. He collects surplus grain during the years of plenty, storing it for the famine years. Then there is his plan for distribution control. When the famine hits, Yosef sells grain to the Egyptians, first for money, then for livestock, and finally for land. By the end of the famine, Pharaoh is not just a nominal leader of Egypt. He owns everything in Egypt, because through Yosef he has taken control of the economy, securing it for the future. Yosef even relocates the Egyptian population to different areas, creating a society that brings the best out of itself and of its resources. As a result of Yosef, Egypt becomes the superpower of its day, dwarfing any of its competitors. But then there's a problem. The Egyptians don't love being indebted to Yosef. After his death, a new pharaoh arises who did not know Joseph, as the Pasuk says, and the gratitude disappears overnight. Because here's the thing, although Yosef's vision is noble, it's also naive. He believes that if he saves Egypt, the Egyptians will embrace him and his family forever. Instead, his success breeds resentment. This is a harsh but timeless lesson. Yosef's mission is a universal mission. He has a desire to fix the world, and you know, that's been the dream of Jews since his day and throughout world history. It is an admirable mission, but it's not foolproof, to put it mildly. Yosef's story highlights a tension that runs through Jewish history. How do we engage with the world without losing ourselves? How do we contribute to humanity without becoming overextended or misunderstood? How can we be universal without losing our particularity? In a way, Yosef's story isn't just about ancient Egypt. It's a blueprint for how Jews have interacted with the wider world throughout history. From the courts of medieval Europe to the modern political and diplomatic scene, Jews have often found themselves in positions like Yosef's, key players in someone else's system, trying to make a difference while navigating hostility and suspicion. Yosef teaches us that ambition and vision are vital, but so are caution and self-awareness. It's not enough to want to save the world. You must understand the risks and the consequences. Now that we've seen Yosef's universal vision, let's talk about the conflict it sparks with his brothers. To put it mildly, they're not on board with Yosef's big dreams, and honestly, who can blame them? From their perspective, Yosef is a problem, a threat to the family's unity, and maybe even to its survival. But here's the deeper issue. This isn't just a sibling squabble. Yosef and his brothers represent two competing visions for the future of the Jewish people. The question at the heart of their conflict is this: how do we fulfill our mission as a people? Let's break it down. Yosef's vision, as we've seen, is universal. He believes that the Jewish people can engage with the world, fix it, and lead it. His dreams about sheaves of wheat and stars in the night sky aren't just personal, they're about the family stepping onto the global stage and becoming a guiding light for humanity. But the brothers, led by Yehuda, have a very different vision. For them, the priority is all about preserving the family's identity and staying true to its spiritual mission. They've seen what happens when you try to mix with the outside world. Look at what happened with Lavan or with Shechem. Their approach is more insular. Protect what we have, stay separate, and build from within. Yosef represents outreach. The brothers represent preservation. Both approaches have their merits, but they're fundamentally at odds with each other. The tension between these two visions comes to a head when Yosef tells his brothers about his dreams. For the brothers, it's not just that the dreams are arrogant or self-centered, it's that they are a threat to their idea of the future for the family. They believe that Yosef's vision of leadership and engagement will lead to disaster. So they make a decision. Yosef has to go. At first, they plan to kill him, but ultimately they sell him into slavery. Why? Not because they are angry with him, or at least not just because they are angry with him. They're trying to solve what they see as an existential problem. In their minds, Yosef is a danger to the family's survival, and this is the only way to stop him. But there's a twist. The Torah's description of the sale is deliberately ambiguous. Did the brothers actually sell Yosef, or was it the Midianites who sold him? Who's actually responsible? The ambiguity forces us to grapple with a larger question. Was what happened purely human, or was it all part of God's plan? In any event, either way, the conflict between Yosef and his brothers isn't just a personal feud, it's a clash of leadership styles. Yosef is a visionary. He sees the big picture, but he's not always great at reading the room. The brothers are more grounded, but they lack Yosef's long-term perspective. What's incredible about this story is how God's hand is woven through it, all of it. The brothers think they're getting rid of Yosef, but their actions set the stage for Yosef to rise to power in Egypt, to see out his vision and eventually save the family. Yosef himself acknowledges this when he reveals his identity to his brothers. Ve'ata, al te'otzvu, ve'al yichar be'inechem, ki machartem oisi heina, ki lemichya shlachani Elokim lifnechem. Don't be distressed or angry with yourself for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. Yosef sees the bigger picture. What his brothers meant for harm, God used for good. Yosef and his brothers represent two sides of a timeless debate. How do we engage with the world without losing who we are? Do we focus inward, like the brothers, and preserve our identity by staying separate? Or do we engage with the world, like Yosef, and try to lead by example? And here's the thing. The Torah doesn't give us a clear answer, because both approaches are valid and both are necessary. In different times and different places, it could be Yosef's vision that works, or it could be Yehuda and the brothers who are right. And more often than not, it's some kind of hybrid. Yosef's vision is bold and ambitious, but it can't succeed without the grounding and cohesion provided by his brothers. And the brothers' approach, while cautious and protective, needs Yosef's vision to reach beyond itself. This conflict isn't just Yosef's story, it's the Jewish story. It's the tension between isolation and integration, between tradition and innovation, between the need to protect what we have and the desire to share it with the world. Yosef and his brothers teach us that being Jewish and fulfilling our mission is complex. It's not about choosing one path over the other. It's about finding a balance between competing visions and working together to achieve something greater. Yosef's life story is more than just a story of riches to rags to riches. It's a blueprint for understanding two distinct Jewish approaches to redemption, the roles of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. These two messianic visions, which are deeply rooted in Jewish tradition, find their origin in the profound dichotomy embodied by Yosef and his eventual reconciliation with Yehuda. Yosef represents the Jewish approach to engaging with the broader world. From the moment he steps into Egypt as a slave, Yosef demonstrates the ability to maintain his spiritual and moral integrity in a foreign and often hostile environment. He thrives not by isolating himself, but by immersing himself in Egyptian society, climbing its ranks, and ultimately using his influence to save countless lives, including those of his own family. This reflects the essence of Mashiach ben Yosef, whose role is to engage politically and economically with the world, leading the Jewish people out of galut, out of exile, and fighting the battles necessary for their survival. Yosef's life in Egypt serves as a prototype for this mission. His wisdom and administrative acumen allow him to become a savior for Egypt and later for his family. Yet this outward engagement comes with risks, as Yosef himself learns by the end of his life. Before his death, Yosef expresses a pivotal understanding. Exile is not the ultimate solution. In his final exchange with his brothers, Yosef says, "Pakod yifkod Elokim eschem, va'alisem es atzmoisai mizeh." God will surely remember you, and you shall carry up my bones from here, from Egypt. Rashi explains that Yosef foresaw the failure of assimilation and the coming enslavement. While his initial vision involved integrating with the nations to bring about redemption, he ultimately realized that true redemption must center on a return to the land of Israel. This marks the transition from Yosef as the individual to the position of Mashiach ben Yosef, whose mission is to pave the way for Mashiach ben David. Yosef's request to have his bones buried in Eretz Yisrael demonstrates this shift. And then we have Yehuda, the only other brother to have more than a secondary role in the Parshias, in the portions that conclude Sefer Vayeishev. While Yosef embodies engagement with the world, Yehuda represents the preservation of Jewish identity from within. Yehuda's defining moment comes when he takes responsibility for Binyamin, declaring, "Ki avdecha arav es hanar." Your servant has become a guarantor for the boy. Yehuda transitions from focusing on his own personal survival to becoming the ultimate guarantor for the family. This willingness to sacrifice for the collective is the foundation of Mashiach ben David, who will lead the Jewish people through spiritual unity and moral clarity. Yosef and Yehuda represent two essential, complementary approaches to redemption. Yosef's method involves political and economic mastery, navigating exile while safeguarding Jewish identity and faith. Yehuda's path emphasizes rootedness in Torah and a spiritual foundation built on collective responsibility, so that when we get to the end of days, we are physically strong and spiritually strong. The interplay between Yosef and Yehuda is ultimately what ensures the survival and flourishing of the Jewish people. Yehuda's leadership is solidified when Yaakov entrusts him to establish a spiritual center in Goshen, before the family descends into exile. But Yaakov also blesses Yosef with a unique role, the ability to thrive in the nations and even influence them, as epitomized by his sons Ephraim and Manasseh. Ephraim, described by Hosea in the Novi as one who will mingle among the nations, reflects Yosef's enduring legacy as the model of engaging with the world while preserving Jewish values. Jewish tradition teaches that redemption will unfold in two stages, symbolized by Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David. The Mashiach ben Yosef phase represents the political and material foundation of redemption. Like Yosef in Egypt, Mashiach ben Yosef will lead the Jewish people through practical means, building infrastructure, ensuring security, and preparing the world for spiritual renewal. However, this role is fraught with danger. Tradition holds that Mashiach ben Yosef may fall in battle, underscoring the inherent risks of engaging with a broken and often hostile world. Following the groundwork laid by Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David will usher in the ultimate spiritual redemption. This phase focuses on the fulfillment of the Jewish mission to bring God's light to the world. Neither of these two approaches can exist without the other. They are two halves of a whole. They complement each other. The success of Mashiach ben David depends on the preparatory work of Mashiach ben Yosef. And Mashiach ben Yosef has no purpose if he is not followed by Mashiach ben David. I think you'll agree that Yosef's life story remains deeply relevant. Yosef teaches us that leadership in exile requires a delicate balance between engagement and integrity. His ability to navigate Egypt's power structures without losing himself is an enduring model for Jews living in the diaspora. But Yosef's ultimate recognition that the Jewish mission must be rooted in the land of Israel provides a critical counterbalance to his earlier vision. And the tension between Yosef and Yehuda reminds us that redemption is a process. It begins with the practical and progresses to the spiritual. Yosef's legacy challenges us to dream big, but also to recognize our limits. His partnership with Yehuda reflects the broader truth that the Jewish people thrive when we embrace both our worldly responsibilities and our spiritual mission. In the end, the question of whether Yosef is a patriarch or a son doesn't have a simple answer. It's both and it's neither. Yosef occupies a unique space in the narrative of the Jewish people. While the Gemara in Brachos definitively states, Ein kohen avos ela lishloisha, only Avraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov are called patriarchs, Yosef's role far exceeds that of a typical tribe leader, tribe founder. His prominence in Sefer Vayeishev, the elevation of his sons to tribal status, and his role as a bridge between the patriarchs and the tribes place him in a category of his own. Yosef is not an Av, a patriarch, in the sense of defining the spiritual DNA of the Jewish people. That task was completed by Avraham, Yitzhak and Yaakov. But Yosef is also more than a son. He is the linchpin between the founding fathers of the nation and its future as a people. Without Yosef, the transition from a family to a nation would not have been possible. Yosef's leadership and foresight ensured the survival of his family and laid the groundwork for their eventual redemption. Although, at the end of it all, it is Yehuda who becomes the leader of the Jewish people. As Yaakov's blessing confirms, La Yosser Shevet mi Yehuda, the scepter shall not depart from Yehuda. At the same time, Yehuda's preeminence does not diminish Yosef's unique contribution. Yosef is the model for how Jews can engage with the broader world without losing their spiritual core. And that is so important. The interplay between Yosef and Yehuda reflects a deeper truth about Jewish leadership. It requires both the outward vision of Yosef and the inward focus of Yehuda. So, is Yosef a patriarch or a son? He is both and he's neither. Yosef occupies a transitional space between the founding fathers and the tribal heads, between individual greatness and national destiny. His story reminds us that Jewish leadership in particular, and the Jewish story in general, is multifaceted, requiring both bold vision and grounded responsibility. And Yehuda emerges as the enduring leader, the one who carries the Jewish people forward. But his leadership would not have been possible without Yosef's contributions. Together, Yosef and Yehuda embody the dual roles of the Jewish people, engaging with the world while preserving our unique identity. Both Yosef and Yehuda are essential. Yosef is the dreamer, the visionary, the one who builds the bridge to the nations. Yehuda is the guarantor, the unifier, the one who anchors the Jewish mission in its eternal values. It is through their partnership, their tension, and their eventual reconciliation that the Jewish people become who we are meant to be. Yosef and Yehuda embody two sides of the redemptive coin. Mashiach ben Yosef lays the groundwork, fighting the battles and building the infrastructure, while Mashiach ben David brings the spiritual redemption that completes the Jewish mission. Yosef's vision reminds us to dream big, to engage with the world, and to believe in the power of transformation. Yehuda's leadership grounds us in our values, uniting us as a people with a shared destiny. Together, they inspire hope for the day when the practical and the spiritual merge and redemption becomes a reality. This duality of Yosef and Yehuda, of Mashiach ben Yosef and Mashiach ben David, reminds me of a story about Rav Avram Yitzchak HaKohen Kook, the visionary chief rabbi of Eretz Yisrael. Rav Kook once encountered a group of secular Jewish pioneers working the fields in the land of Israel. These were Jews who had cast off the yoke of Torah and mitzvahs, focusing instead on building the physical foundations of the Jewish state. Rav Kook befriended them and treated them with love and respect. Someone asked Rav Kook how he could possibly approve of their work when their religious observance was lacking. Rav Kook responded with a deep smile, and he said, "These pioneers are like Yosef HaTzadik. Yosef prepared the groundwork for the survival of our people in exile, ensuring the physical survival of Yaakov's family. But Yosef's role was only the beginning. Just as Mashiach ben Yosef must lay the foundation for the work of Mashiach ben David, these pioneers, these farmers, are paving the way for the spiritual redemption that will follow. We must embrace their efforts while guiding them toward the ultimate goal." Rav Kook's insight encapsulates the message of Yosef and Yehuda. We need Yosef's ability to engage with the world and build its infrastructure. And we need Yehuda's spiritual depth and collective unity to channel that infrastructure into something eternal. May we merit to see the day when Yosef's dreams and Yehuda's leadership come together, when the practical and the spiritual merge into the ultimate redemption. B'mheira v'yameinu, amen v'amen. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you.